Asia's demographic time bomb is ready to explode. You've heard about the trade wars, the tech rivalries, even pandemics. But what if I told you the biggest economic rumbling under Asia's giants, China, South Korea, Japan, isn't an external shockwave, but something happening from within? We are talking about abandoned towns, national wealth vanishing, and the fabric of society potentially getting torn apart. This isn't some far off sci-fi scenario. It's unfolding right now, where in Japan, 3 out of every 10 people are already over the age of 65. This problem comes down to numbers. It comes down to birth rates. 2.1 children are needed to maintain a stable population, and South Korea is at an impotent 0.7, a number that is a record low, the lowest by any country ever recorded. We have China, the world's factory, but they're not much further ahead. They have a total fertility rate of only about 1.0, with some cities like Shanghai reporting rates as low as 0.8. That's a world away from the 2.6 children that each woman had back in 1990. In 2023, China saw only about 9 million births. It was the fewest they've had since 1949. And Japan has already been ravaged by this problem. They have a total fertility rate of about 1.2. Births fell for 8 straight years to a record low of 758,000, while deaths were about 1.6 million, more than double that in 2023. So why the baby bust? It is a perfect storm. It is eye-watering costs for kids, where in South Korea it can cost $200,000 or more to get a child to university. Immense career pressures, especially on women, a serious lack of affordable, quality childcare, and a real shift in what people want out of life. In China, the cost of raising a child to age 18 is nearly 7 times the average person's income. Compare this with about 4 times as much in the US. So fewer babies sounds simple, but the economic impact affects everything. First, your workforce shrinks. China's working age population dropped by 11 million people in 2023 alone. Japan's workforce could be 40% smaller by 2060. Fewer workers means less stuff gets made, less innovation happens, and a smaller tax base to support an ever-growing number of seniors. South Korea expects its working age population to halve by 2070. And this directly throttles economic growth. Goldman Sachs believes China's annual GDP could slow down to around 1% by 2050. For Japan, some economists see potential near zero long-term growth unless huge changes happen, and those are not foreseen. South Korea is facing the steepest decline with the lowest birth rates, and it might see its growth potentially dip below Japan within a few decades, according to the Bank of Korea. Of course, there is an aspect of consumption. Fewer young people mean fewer people are buying stuff like cars, homes, and all of that fuels an economy. Japan's consumer spending has been flat for years, partly because of an aging population that tends to spend less and save more. And it's a trend visible in China and South Korea as well. Japan's households headed by someone over 60 spend about 20% less than those headed by people in their 40s and 50s. And consider that social security systems are built like pyramids. Lots of young workers at the bottom supporting a few retirees at the top. Now, all of a sudden, flip that, and the system is in dire straits. Japan already poured over 20% of its GDP into Social Security, and that number is going up every year. China's state pension fund, some Chinese researchers believe it could be empty by 2035. Now, let's talk about where so much family wealth is tied up, and that is property. In China, it's an estimated 70% of a household's wealth on average. In South Korea, it is 60 to 70%. What happens when populations shrink, especially outside big cities? If you've guessed ghost towns, you are correct. Ghost towns aren't just a movie trope. Property values plummet. Rural Japan already has over 8.5 million homes vacant as of 2018, and that number is likely around 10 million now, with some villages literally giving houses away for free just to have someone to move in. This isn't just a rural issue, of course. As demand in smaller cities dries up, it forces people into megacities, where nearly half of all South Koreans live in the city of Seoul and its surrounding area. Vacancy rates in non-metro Japanese prefectures can soar to 15 to 20%. And the debt linked to these potentially devaluing assets is colossal. China's household debt is over 60% of its GDP, much of that in mortgages. A serious property downturn can wipe out fortunes. It can wreck the economy. To some extent, it already has. In some regional Japanese cities, commercial land prices have more than halved since their 1990s peak. And I want to stress, this is not just future gazing. It is today's realities. Fewer kids mean fewer schools. In South Korea, over 100 elementary schools closed between 2021 and 2023. Japan has shut down or merged nearly 400 public schools in 2023 alone. That's not just empty buildings. It's lost jobs for teachers, bus drivers, support staff, and more. Next up, universities. Almost half of Japan's private universities are already struggling to fill seats. And you can be sure the healthcare industry will feel it too. Fewer babies means fewer doctors, fewer nurses, maternity wards shutting down. South Korea has already seen over 30% of its obstetric clinics close in the last decade. Meanwhile, geriatric care demand is exploding, but who will care for these people with a shrinking and aging workforce? Japan already needs hundreds of thousands of more care workers for its elderly, a gap expected to hit nearly 700,000 by 2040. And we could think of other smaller industries like toys, kids' clothes, face a shrinking customer base. And here's a wild one. In Japan, the sale of adult diapers overtook baby diapers all the way back in 2011. China's situation is unique because of its sheer size and its race to get rich before it gets old. The end of the one-child policy in 2016 brought a brief baby blip, but by 2023, it only had about 9 million births, which were less than half of the 18.8 million in 2016. China's population officially shrank by 2.1 million in 2023, and the median age there is now about 39, up from 25 in 1990. China's birth rate numbers are actually worse than their 1.0 birth rate might indicate, and that's due to gender selection during the one-child policy years, skewing populations towards a higher percentage of male births. Click the time card above to find out more. Meanwhile, South Korea is practically falling off a demographic cliff. Its population started shrinking in 2020, and it could have or more by 2100. The military is already wondering where the future soldiers will come from, with drafty numbers set to fall 40% by the 2030s. The intense pressure of modern life and the high costs of living are crazy. Investment in anything baby-related has nosedived. The baby formula market has shrunk by over 40% over the last decade in South Korea. Meanwhile, Japan is essentially the demographic canary in the coal mine for the whole world. It shows us what's coming. Its population peaked at 128 million in 2008. It's now around 123 million, losing about 800,000 people a year. And let's be clear, governments are trying to reverse this. Cash for babies, subsidized childcare, help with housing. China's pushing pro-baby policies now. South Korea spent over 200 billions in the last couple decades to encourage baby making. But let's be honest, they're pretty dismal results. And while immigration could help, it's a tough sell culturally. Japan's foreign-born population is only about 2.2%. South Korea is about 2.5%, and China is even lower. And sure, AI and robots will pick up some of the slack in terms of labor, but robots don't buy houses or pay income tax. Well, not yet anyway. And they certainly don't employ doctors, nurses, teachers, or anything like that. This isn't just about economics. It's about the human story, the future of these once vibrant cultures. The demographic issue in East Asia will be felt more deeply every year. The low birth rates we see today are not just numbers on a page. They are shaping a profoundly different and likely a much tougher future for millions. Each year, this continues, and what we're watching is a slow motion unraveling, one that will redefine global power and how societies function for generations. The big question is how this demographic winter will play out. Will these countries be able to weather the storm, or will it cause an economic ice age for some of Asia's most powerful countries? So, how do you see East Asia's potential demographic crisis playing out? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Blinded by Logic. Thanks for watching.